Hey, Allison Verhalen here with AV Writing Services, and today I am talking to you about content strategy and content marketing and how you need both of them and you need them to work together in order to get where you want to go. So content marketing, you're just going around in circles trying to get where you need to go, and you're not going to get anywhere because you don't have the strategy behind it to drive the content marketing to make sure that you have a target and you know how to get there and you're doing the things you need in order to achieve that goal. And again, content strategy without the content marketing is kind of like looking at your goal and saying, yeah, that would be great if I could get there and I know how to get there, but I'm not actually doing what I need to do to get there. So we're going to break it down for you in this video, all about content strategy and then content marketing and the things you need to do to get them to work together. So first and foremost, with content strategy, you have to define your target audience. It is the very first thing you need to do before you do any marketing whatsoever, much less creating any content. You have to define their gender, or if they're gender non-binary, or if there's some combination of those three categories. Are they religious? If so, which religion, which denomination? Do they belong to certain racial or ethnic groups? What's their income level? If you're in a B2B industry, you need to know their job title as well as their income level. Do they have a family? How big is their family? Do they have pets? Do they have hobbies? What are their hobbies? What are they reading? What kind of content are they consuming? You need to know all of this and put it into marketing personas. I say at least two, one for each gender. And again, if you're going with gender non-binary, maybe go for a third marketing persona. So at least two, maybe three marketing personas. Make sure you cover all your bases and create a name for each one. Come up with a drawing or a stock photo for each one so you can make it personal. So when you create your content, you know that you are creating content for these people. And different content can speak to different segments of your different marketing personas, right? Because you've got your different markets. So you can have some content for one market and another kind of content for another market. But you're always going to want to make sure that you are implementing them, and again, you're speaking to those people as individuals. You are trying to attract a large audience. Obviously, you don't want to work with just one or two people, but you want it to feel like you're only talking to one or two people, because you want to get right down to that emotion, those pain points, and the emotions that are going to motivate them to buy your products or services. So that's the very first thing you need to do, is determine your target audience. And the next thing you need to do is your keyword research. So your target audience has this very specific pain point that you can solve for them. So what search terms are they using to find solutions to that pain point? And those are the search terms that you are going to want to use in your content, in your meta tags, and in your title. It's even going to determine the topics that you cover on your blog posts, the titles of your sales pages and your landing pages. So you have to know all of that before you can actually write that content. And you also need to understand keyword intent, right? If someone is searching how-to, there are a lot of how-to searches out there and a lot of how-to blog posts out there. There are a lot of how-to blog posts because there are a lot of how-to searches, right? That's usually where people start when they have a pain point. They're not necessarily looking to buy just yet, but they might be looking for a little more information on this pain point and how they can solve it for themselves before they make a purchasing decision. So that's how you can get in front of them right off the bat, is tell them how they can solve this problem for themselves, or at least alleviate it, and then let them know if they need more help with that problem, you are available with your products and services. By contrast, if they're searching something like financial planner who serves African Americans in this particular geographic area, they are looking for something very specific, right? They are ready to hire, they know what they need, they just need to find that specific person who has everything, who has all of those qualifications that they need, and then they're gonna reach out and buy. So you have to let them know, yeah, that's me. I have what you need. I'm over here, come on over. So you're gonna use those particular keywords on those landing pages rather than on your blog posts. So next up, you are going to want to find out which social media channels they are on, right? So there are a lot of social media channels out there. Do not try to get on all of them. First of all, because that's exhausting and you can spend literally all of your time on social media and not actually do any of your products or services or do any of the other things that you need to do for your business. So limit it, because again, the second thing is that your target audience is not on all of the social media channels. Chances are they are on 2 or 3 social media channels primarily. And they're not wasting time with TikTok if they're primarily on Facebook. And if they're primarily on TikTok, they're not going to be on Facebook or LinkedIn. So understand where they're hanging out online, narrow it down to 2 or 3 social media channels, and get to know those social media channels really well, because each one has its own audience, its own rules, its own algorithm. Facebook, for example, up until very recently, you could use hashtags on Facebook. It didn't work very well, and just recently they have updated that, so now they're encouraging people to use hashtags on Facebook. So again, and hashtags started out on Twitter and Instagram, so you could use hashtags on those and on LinkedIn, not so much on Facebook. So figure out those rules, figure out where you can be using hashtags, where you cannot, how many hashtags you should be using, which hashtags are most valuable. They all have their own rules, so get to know them really well before you start posting on any of those social media platforms. Next up, you're going to want to make a schedule and stick to it, right? That is where so many people fall short when they're trying to do their own content marketing, is especially with blogging. They blog when they have time, when they feel like it, when inspiration strikes and they want to write about a particular topic. That's when they blog, but that's not necessarily what's most valuable for their audience. That's not necessarily going to get them in front of people when they need to get in front of them. So figure out when people are most likely to visit your blog, and that's when you should be publishing, because that's going to get people to your website right away. That's going to get the most traffic, the most engagement, the most number of comments, and that's going to help boost your blog post in the rankings. So figure out that timing and act accordingly. And again, weekends can also be good. Maybe not so much for the B2B industry, maybe in some B2C industries, weekends would be really good, because that's when people tend to be looking for that kind of content, and they're most likely to read that kind of content and engage. You tend to get more comments over the weekend. So again, figure that out. It's going to depend based on your particular audience. Do a little bit of research, see what your competitors are doing, figure out how often you want to blog, how often you can blog. Realistically, that is going to be limited either by your own time and resources if you're doing it yourself, and it's going to be limited by your budget if you're hiring a professional to do it for you. So again, figure that out. What's realistic for your circumstances? I would say absolutely no less than once per month. Ideally once per week if you can swing it. But again, that's not realistic for everyone, and I always say consistency and quality matter over quantity. So focus on those 2 things. Quantity is great, but it is the least important of those 3. Your newsletter, again, figure out when they're most likely to be checking their email. If it's B2B, you're gonna aim for the middle of the week. Everyone's depressed on Monday, so don't go for Mondays. Everyone's already thinking about the weekend on Friday. A lot of people take Fridays off, so don't worry about Fridays. Tuesday through Thursday tend to be your best days if you're in the B2B industry, because that's when they're in the office, that's when they're most likely to open it and read content and click to your website and consume that content that is most relevant to them, to their particular situation. If you're in a B2C industry, if you're selling hygiene products or clothing or jewelry or makeup, then maybe you do go more for the weekend. Maybe that's when people are more likely to be checking their personal email and they're more likely to be doing some shopping. So again, figure it out. It's going to be a little bit different based on each industry and on each target audience. So you're going to want to do some A/B testing to figure it out. And social media, again, each social media channel has its own rules. LinkedIn, Facebook, in general, you can post on each of those once or twice per day. I would not say any more than that. Twitter, by contrast, I think the most successful accounts tweet like 15 times per day. And again, the timing is going to be a little bit different. LinkedIn is in the morning, Facebook tends to be a little bit later, and Twitter is just all over the map, and Instagram is kind of all over the map. So you're going to, again, that goes back to getting to know each of those social media channels that your target audience is on and knowing when you need to be posting on those particular channels. Next up, your brand's voice and tone. So if you are a reader like I am, you are going to want to, you know that when you read something by your favorite author, even if it's something you've never read before, you know instantly when it is something that they have written, because it sounds so much like them, because no one else writes quite like them, right? You can read just a page or maybe even just a paragraph or two and say, yeah, this is absolutely something Jane Austen wrote or something Salman Rushdie wrote. Whoever your favorite author is, you're gonna know that because no one else writes like them. Your content for your brand should be the exact same way. People should be able to identify content that came from your company at a glance. So the way that you do that, that requires strategy, right? That requires an investment of time, and some thought has to go into it first. You want to know, what kind of tone do you want to use? Do you want it to be light and conversational? Do you want it to be more professional, maybe a little bit more reserved? Do you want it to be super emotional and exciting? Do you want to use that fear? Do you want to tap into that fear to get people, to motivate them to take the next step in the buyer journey? Let them know, hey, things are bad for you and they're only going to get worse unless you do such and such. Or maybe things are going well for you right now, but they could change and you want to be prepared if they do. So tap into that and to motivate them to buy. But it's going to depend on your brand and the tone and the voice that you want to use. What I have done in the past with people who don't already have something written down, because you're going to want to write all this down. You're going to want to have it in a document to make it super easy so that it's consistent regardless of who's creating the content, right? Whether it's you or a business partner or someone that you're hiring, you want a guideline that everyone can follow so that regardless of who's creating the content, it's always going to sound like your brand. And this is going to make it so much easier if you hire a content marketer. You're going to be less frustrated because you're not going to have to keep sending it back for edits saying, no, we don't want it to sound like this. No, we don't want to use that word or that phrase. Create a guideline, send it to them. It's going to make their job a whole lot easier too, because then they know right off the bat what you expect. So determine your brand's voice and tone, create that guideline, keep it somewhere where you always know where it is so that when you do hire someone, or if you bring someone onto your team who's going to be covering that responsibility, you can say, this is what we expect. This is what we need our content to look like, to sound like, to feel like. So that's that part. Next up, your content length. Obviously, this is going to vary depending on the platform that you're on, right? So Twitter, for example, limits you to 240 characters, and you can't write a whole blog post on Twitter. And by contrast, 240 characters on a blog post is not going to convert any leads. Twitter, obviously, gonna be super short. LinkedIn, I've seen varying data. I've seen stuff that shows that longer content on LinkedIn actually does better. Not necessarily a full LinkedIn article, those are doing really well too, but sometimes something, 2 or 3 paragraphs on LinkedIn can do really well. So again, you're gonna wanna figure out that particular channel, what works best on that channel, what gets you the most engagement, and is actually converting leads for you. So figure that out. For blog posts, it's not looking good. Last year, I believe it was an average of 1,750 words was the average length of the blog posts that showed up on the first page of Google for various searches. That was when you took all that information and combined it, and the average was like 1,700 words. So that's a lot. I just recently saw data that said it's more like, in 2020, it's more like 2,300 words per blog post to perform the best, to get the most traffic, the most engagement. I've seen content marketers who are at the top of their game, they're professionals who say that for their own businesses, they never write a blog post less than 2,000 words. Some never write a blog post less than 3,000 words. They're going even longer. They want that really in-depth content that covers everything their audience is looking for. That's a lot. So again, going back to your schedule, that's going to be determined partly by the length, right? If you can realistically get a 2,000 to 3,000 word blog post every week, good for you, go for it. If you can only do that once every other week or once a month, do that, because that is, again, that consistency and quality matter much more than quantity. If you're banging out a 2,000 word blog post every week or every other day, but it's not very good because you're just pumping it out, that's not going to get you any conversions. That's not going to get any leads to your website. So again, always focus on quality and consistency over quantity. And again, that guideline for the longer blog posts, that tends to be a lot of the B2B stuff. If you're in a B2C industry, you can probably get away with a shorter post. I still say, I know back in the day, in the early days of SEO, it was that 500 word blog post that everyone was aiming for, and it's just getting longer and longer. But I think for some industries, there's a lot to be said for the 500, maybe the 1,000 word blog post stuff that's not super short, but a little bit shorter, or a lot shorter if you're going over 2,000 words. Cutting back to 1,000 or even 500 words is very short, but it can still be effective. Again, especially if it's high quality and you're publishing on a consistent basis, focus on that. So, and again, do some A/B testing. If you have content that performs really well, I know I've seen blog posts show up on the first page of Google that are only 500, maybe 700 words long. That again, they have what I need and I'm able to get in there and get the information I need and get out. If you do write the super long blog posts, my blog posts tend to be super long, so I put a table of contents at the top. If you're writing that super long 2,000 to 3,000 word blog post, let's be honest, people are not reading all 2,000 of those words. They're gonna get in, they're gonna get what they need, they're gonna get out. They're gonna skim when they can, because we live in a world of constant demands. We have a ton of demands on our time and our resources and tons of content. We cannot possibly consume all of the content that is being produced and thrown at us. So you need to A, give people a reason to read your content, and B, understand that regardless of all the time and effort and love that you put into that content, people are not reading all of it. They want to get in, they want to skim, they want to get out. So figure out how to make that super easy for them. You got those subheadlines throughout your content so they know what each section is about. And again, I put a table of contents at the very top of my blog post with links. So if you come to my blog post, for example, the blog post that this video is based on, you can get right to that table. Maybe you don't care about content strategy. Maybe you want to get straight to content marketing. You just want to know the how-tos of blogging, for example. You can go to that link at my table of contents and just click on the link and go to that section, get what you need, get out. It's super easy and super valuable, right? So consider what your audience wants and make it easy for them. And this leads neatly into my next point about the buyer journey. So again, where is your audience in the buyer journey when they find your content? And it's going to be a little bit different for each piece of content, right? If they're on your website, they probably know who you are. If they're on your blog, maybe they're searching for more information, getting to know about you, making sure that you really know as much as you claim to know. If you're on social media, that's brand awareness, right? That's people who maybe have this pain point but did not know that you existed, or maybe they don't have this pain point yet, but they might at some point in the future. And so by getting that brand awareness and constantly pushing content in front of them so that you're top of mind, then when they do have that pain point, when they do need you, your brand will be the first one that they think of and the first one that they reach out to, because you'll have built that trust with them. So it's all about leading them through the buyer journey, and it's going to look different for each industry, right? I know there are some, if you're selling jewelry, it's super cheap. If you're selling pet care products, you can usually sell something directly off of social media. Just put an ad, say, hey, I've got this product. Maybe you got a short video that kind of displays how it works, demonstrates that for your audience, so they can just click through to your website and go straight to buying it, which is great. For B2B, for something like attorneys or financial planners, you're going to have a little bit of a longer buyer journey. It's going to take longer to get that trust from people. So you're going to want to produce that content and push it out regularly and kind of lead them along that journey. So if they get to your website for the first time, they're not necessarily ready to buy just yet. They're going to be the ones who read a whole bunch of blog posts and explore your website a little bit before making a buying decision. So, and maybe they don't need you right now, but you're going to want to make sure that you have a way to continue pushing content in front of them. So at the end of your blog post, you're going to want to invite them to follow you on social media or subscribe for your newsletter so that you can keep getting in front of them, so that when they are ready to buy, you'll be top of mind. Your brand will be the very first brand that they think of. So that is content strategy. You've got your strategy in place. You know what you're going to do. Now you actually have to do it. So let's talk about writing some of that content. I always start with the landing pages, right? I want to start at the end because everything else is going to lead back there. So in order to do that, I have to have that in place first. So create that landing page, make sure it's optimized, go back to your keyword research, right? What are the keywords that your target audience is using with the high buyer intent? What are they searching when they're looking for that landing page? And you're going to want to include those keywords again in the title, throughout the content, in your meta tags, all over the place. And again, tap into those emotions to convince people to buy. I have a whole other video and blog post about content for sales pages, so feel free to check that out. Next up is your blog, and like we said, you're going to want to publish consistently. You're going to want to determine your blog post length, how long is each blog post going to be, and it doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule, right? You can have some blog posts that are 3,000 words and other blog posts that are 1,000 words. If you say everything you need to say in 1,000 words, don't pump out another 1,000 to 2,000 words of fluff that no one cares about, because that's not going to help you rank in Google. That's not going to help convert leads who find your website. So like I said, it's a guideline. It's a good idea to write 2,000 words per blog post if you can, if that's realistic, but don't think that every single blog post needs to be that long. And again, as far as blog post topics, I hear this a lot from people. I don't know what to blog about, so I don't blog. Go back to your keyword research. What are people looking for? What answers are they searching for? What is your competition writing about? My favorite topic generator is Answer the Public, where you can put in a particular keyword and it will generate a whole bunch, it will generate the most common questions associated with that keyword. So, and then you can take those questions, you can go back to your keyword research, you can search that whole long key phrase, make sure that the whole title that you're using is optimized for those searches. So, next up, your newsletter. I think I forgot to mention this in the content length of your newsletter. I mentioned blogs and social media, but your newsletter should be no more than 400 to 500 words. I would say generally you want to keep it short and sweet because, again, people don't really have time to read super long newsletters. They want to get in, get what they need, and get out. So if you have an announcement, let them know about it right away. If you have something you want to lead them back to your website for some reason, if you're letting them know about a new blog post, let them know, give them a little introduction and then that link back to your website. So, and again, know where they are in the buyer journey. They're probably more aware of you if they've already subscribed to your newsletter, so you're not working on brand awareness here. You're working on reminding them that you still exist and leading them through that funnel so that when they do need you, you're going to be the one that they reach out to as soon as they need you, because your brand will be top of mind for them. And finally, social media, and that is brand awareness, and that is where you are just providing value, you're interacting with your target audience, you're using the right hashtags, you're interacting with influencers, all that good stuff. And again, that's gonna be based on the social media channels that you're on and your strategy, where you looked at what gets the best results on this particular social media channel. You're gonna know all that before you start posting so that you can create a schedule. I'm on Twitter a lot, and Twitter is one of those where you need to be publishing all the time. So I schedule that ahead of time. I do not actually spend all day on Twitter, but I make it look like I spend all day on Twitter because I use one of those scheduling software, which is super helpful. So again, know what works for you. Finally, content strategy. Again, I know we said we have to start with the content strategy and then do content marketing, but it's kind of circular, right? Because creating content never ends. You have to be constantly publishing on social media. constantly publishing new blog posts, constantly pushing out newsletters. So once you have a cycle of a week, a month, however long your cycle is, you're going to want to measure your results. So that goes back to the strategy. What worked? What didn't? What got a lot of clicks? What got clicks but no engagement? What brought people to your website? That's good. If something brought people to your website, that's great. If they did not convert into leads, though, if they did not convert into customers, that's a problem. If they did not continue down the buyer journey, then they got stuck somewhere, and that is a problem with your content. So you are going to want to identify what that problem is. Maybe the content did not sufficiently convey the benefits of doing such and such, or maybe you were asking too much too soon. Maybe you were asking them to buy and they weren't ready to buy yet. They were just in the exploratory phase. Or maybe you were asking them to explore some more, follow you on social media, subscribe to your newsletter, and they couldn't figure out how to buy. They were ready to buy and there was no buy button. So it's always going to take some testing. And again, go back to your keyword research, because the rules on keywords and what's a good keyword and what has a ton of competition out there, what has a lot of traffic, what doesn't have a lot of traffic, that is constantly changing from week to week. So do your research. Again, make sure that the keywords you're using are still valuable keywords and they're still worth it to try to rank for those keywords, because again, stuff might have changed. And then you're going to take that and incorporate it into your strategy and start all over again with creating that awesome content. And that is it. That is everything you need to know about your content strategy and your content marketing and making them work together to grow your business. Again, I am Allison Verhalen with AV Writing Services. We are at avwritingservices.com. If you have any other questions about your content strategy or content marketing or both, you can reach out to me directly at info@avwritingservices.com. Thanks so much. Have a great week.